CRN Talk. Welcome to Divine Love Talk with Dr. Parthenia Grant, where we talk about health, well-being, and the love of the divine that exists in all of us. Now, here's your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant.
Good morning. I'm always excited to be back here at Divine Love Talk to share with you insights that I think are important for anyone who is on a path of personal growth or constant self-transcendence, which is where I choose to be. Today, we're continuing our discussion with my co-host, Kim Michaels, with jewels that I have found from his book, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid. Kim Michaels, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Kim, I found some things that I thought were important for us to look at today, and I wanted to title the show, Finding the Courage to Face Your Own Darkness, because I found the book very courageous, and it's difficult for all of us on a spiritual path to find the courage to look at ourselves and our faults and face our unresolved psychological issues. So today I wanted to talk about the importance of dealing with unresolved psychological issues, because I think a lot of people on the spiritual path, kind of just glide over that and they think that, oh, well, I'm spiritual, so that just kind of takes care of everything. And she talks in the book a lot about the process of dismantling your separate sense of self, and I wanted to take a look at that and the power of a pure and undefiled will. So that's a lot of stuff to cover today, but let's see what we can squeeze into this first hour. So, could I start out with asking you, let's go on into the psychological issues and resolving them. Why is it important? I want to, share that with the audience. Why do you think it's important for us to focus on that?
Well, because everything in the world revolves around our free will. And that means that we cannot enter a higher state of consciousness or heaven or whatever you want to call it unless we choose to do so. But a long time ago, we made the choice to descend to Earth because we wanted to experience what it's like on this planet. And that means that until we are done and until we decide that we are done with this planet, we can't actually leave it.
Okay. Well, what does that mean in practical terms, until we're done with it?
Well, we have to decide that we have had enough of the kind of experiences that this planet offers. And that means in terms of the psychological issues, when you look at the planet and you look at the history of this planet and you look at what's going on right now, you can see that if we have embodied here over many, many lifetimes, it's very, very likely that we have been involved with all kinds of conflicts. Mm-hmm. And we have been hurt, we have been wounded, we've been attacked, we might have been accused falsely. We might have had all kinds of traumas that we have experienced, because when it all comes down to it, this is not a high planet, and we can see that just by looking at the way things are.
That's for sure.
And we really can't embody here without getting hurt, and the hurt and the trauma leads to certain psychological hang-ups, certain psychological issues. And modern psychology is very good at talking about a lot of the issues that we receive from our childhood and forward, but it doesn't recognize reincarnation. It doesn't recognize we could have had hundreds of embodiments where we have received psychological wounds. And many of these wounds actually cause us to go into sort of a pattern. We talked about it before on the show, where the false teachers have created these epic dramas where we think we have to save other people, or we have to save the planet by changing other people. And those are the kind of things that we can very easily be sucked into when we've experienced some kind of trauma ourselves. Instead of working on ourselves, we think it's we can do something by working on other people. And that's what these dramas tell us. And so until we resolve those issues, we are not actually free. You know, if you feel there's something you have to do on this planet, you're not free to leave.
Okay, and you know, I think that was a very cogent point that you just brought up about the fact that we tend to focus on other people's psychological issues and all of their stuff versus our own. And sometimes I think that we use that as an excuse not to deal with our own stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is exactly what the epic dramas do, and that's what the false teachers have created, this whole false mindset. And if it's not surprising that we fall prey to this as spiritual people, because many of us come from a religious background. Either in this life or in previous lifetimes we've been involved with traditional religions. And the traditional religions give you the impression that you can be saved, you can enter heaven by doing a few outer things, following a few outer rules, believing certain doctrines, confessing this, confessing that, participating in rituals. And what traditional religion says, you can be saved without looking at your own psychology.
Right.
And it's kind of strange that Christianity says this when Jesus told us to look at the beam in our own eye.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that's what Christianity has done for 2,000 years. And so this is the heritage we have as spiritual people in the West. And so it's no wonder that we often, in the beginning of our spiritual path, we kind of get sucked into these spiritual gurus and teachers who tell us a similar thing. It's a slightly different message, but it's saying the same thing. If you follow me, if you practice this or that, if you chant so many times, if you do so many hours of this or that, then you can be saved without looking at your psychology. And it just is a lie.
Yeah, and you pointed out when you were involved in the meditation movement that there was sort of this, I don't know if it was a spoken, concept that just through meditating alone that you would be able to resolve all of your issues. Now, I do believe, personally, since I've begun meditating, that I do get a lot of answers when I go within with the meditation process, but I've only been able to get better at meditation since I've been reading this voluminous body of work that you have that constantly is giving me new insights so that when I go into meditation, I can know what questions to ask. It's like if you don't know, you don't know, then you have no idea what the problem is and what to ask. And sometimes it's as simple as asking, well, can you give me a higher understanding of this situation, or what am I missing in this situation, or what do I need to work on or look at that I'm not seeing right now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's because you have also gotten to the stage of your path where you're willing to see things in yourself. And what many of these movements do is that they cater to people who are not yet at that stage. They are not quite ready or willing to take responsibility for themselves. So they give you the impression that you can practice this technique and that's all you need to do. There is nothing wrong with meditation. It's a very valid practice. There are, of course, many different kinds of meditation. But the thing is, if you think that this is all you need to do, then it actually becomes a hindrance on your path because it prevents you from looking at yourself.
Yeah.
And that means you don't even ask for these kind of answers that you were just describing. Many people don't. They just want to meditate, or they just want to chant, or they just want to do this or that.
Yeah.
Do yoga or whatever. And yoga is also a valuable practice.
Absolutely.
But behind yoga is a much deeper philosophy that does require you to look at yourself in order to get maximum results.
Yeah, and as I'm studying and looking at those missing years in the Bible where Christ was in India and in the Orient and in the Middle East, and all of these philosophies and all of these practices that he was exposed to, and all of the learning, the initiations with all of the learning that he had to master, and anyone who calls themselves a Christian, it means to be Christ-like, and he was very, very devoted to resolving his own psychology and learning absolutely everything that he could learn on the path. And I just think that that's the model that we're supposed to be following, and yet so many of us get our degrees in college or high school, and we think that our learning is done. But I'm seeing, and I've always believed, that it's a lifelong pursuit. Element. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, about learning and continually learning for the rest of your life?
Well, the entire purpose of with a very small sense of self, a point-like sense of self, and our ultimate potential is to grow to the same level of self-awareness as away from where I'm at right now.
Me too.
So I know that I'm going to continue learning for the rest of the time I'm on Earth and beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I learned just being in graduate school that the more I know, the more I don't know, and every time I read a book, a lot of times I'm looking at, oh, okay, I already know that, and I know that, and this is good, but I'm always looking at the new stuff, that I haven't mastered and that I haven't encountered, and a lot of the stuff that I'm reading right now, including your work, it makes me realize even more so how much I don't know and how much more work I need to do, and in particular resolving all of the psychological issues that I think have to do with fear. That's the biggest obstacle that all of us have to face, is finding the courage to deal with our about is there's a new fear there were new fears that needed to be faced, and that does take a lot of courage. So what are your thoughts on finding the courage to face your own darkness?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a quick solution, because I think it has to come with time and maturity. I actually think that the only way to conquer fear is through love.
Okay.
And that means you have, as you grow on the path, you have to develop a love for something beyond your own human self, or beyond anything on Earth.
Okay.
And this is not something you can force, but I think you can try and put your attention on, go deep in your heart during meditations and exercises, and see what you really love in life.
Okay. Well,
and I know that when I started...
Oh, well, Kim, let's delve more into the power of love to help us find the courage to face our own darkness when we come back after commercial break. You're listening to Divine Love Talk on CRN. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, and I'm talking to my co-host, Kim Michaels, about ideas that he's covering in his book, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid, and many of his other books. You want to check out his work at TranscendenceToolbox.com.
Located in the heart of Maui's premier resort, Kaanapali Beach Hotel is officially recognized as Hawaii's most Hawaiian hotel and the #1 best value in Hawaii. With a range of accommodations and affordable dining options, this is the ideal setting to turn Hawaiian dreams into lifelong memories. Live Hawaiian entertainment every evening, free year-round children's programs, weekly arts and crafts fairs, welcome breakfast, and departure kukui lei ceremonies add to the value. Swim in the whale-shaped pool, indulge in the fabulous spa and hotel salon. Enjoy Hawaiian hospitality at its best at the Kaanapali Beach Hotel. Call 800-262-8450 or go to kvhmaui.com. That's kvhmaui.com. Aloha.
Kaanapali Beach Hotel, Maui's Hawaiian Hotel.
This is Primetime Focus. I'm Aileen Ellis. When we use a credit card, we typically swipe it and sign. AARP financial educator John Dauphiné.
The United States is the only developed country that still has old-style credit cards, the magnetic stripe and a signature.
In other countries,
they actually have newfangled credit cards that have a chip implanted and a PIN you need when you are doing a transaction. The chip and PIN cards, as they're called, really help to avoid fraud. It's much easier for a scammer to make up fake credit cards with fake magnetic stripes
and fake a signature. Making a chip to embed in a card with security data is a lot harder, and fraud declines.
The United Kingdom did this and found that in a 4-year period, the amount of credit card fraud was roughly cut in half.
Tomorrow, efforts to push companies to adopt the chip and PIN system. That's Primetime Focus, brought to you by AARP. Hear all our programs on the web at aarp.org/radio.
Years ago, the family doctor was a fixture in communities across the country. He'd come into your home and personally treat whoever needed help. He was part of the family. And while that practice has faded into memory, there is someone who keeps the tradition of personal health care alive, your local Health Mart pharmacist. While much of healthcare has become confusing and impersonal, you can drop by your neighborhood Health Mart pharmacy anytime, where your pharmacist will know you by name, not by refill number. That's the spirit of caring you can expect from each independently owned Health Mart pharmacy around the country. So even if a doctor won't be stopping by your house today, you can stop by your local Health Mart pharmacy to get the advice, encouragement, and expert guidance you deserve. Visit healthmart.com for the location near you. Health Mart, caring for you and about you.
Okay, we're back with more Divine Love Talk on CRN. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant. You can find me at drparthenia.com. And I'm talking with my co-host, Kim Michaels, about ideas and concepts that he has in his new book, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid. And today we're focusing on finding the courage to face your own darkness. And before the commercial break, Kim, you brought up that one of the things that can help us deal with our fear is the power of love. And both of these are such abstract concepts, and they're so large and overpowering. I'd like for you to go into some examples and details about how we can move into this space of love so that we can find the courage to dismantle this separate sense of self that we have.
Well, I mean, we all have an outer self, the ego. And the ego is based on fear.
Yes.
And everything it does is motivated by fear and revolves around either overcoming a fear or making it so we can live with it. And so that the ego is never going to lose the fear, but we are not the ego. We are more than the ego. And at the core of our beings, there is a self, and you can call it many names, doesn't really matter, but the masters often call it the conscious you through me, because that's the term they want to use. But the point is that the conscious you, or the real self, is motivated by love.
Okay.
So it is simply natural for us to love. We came here because we loved something. We loved life, we loved growth, and we wanted the opportunity to grow that it is to be an embodiment on a planet like Earth. And so it's really a matter of shifting your sense of self away from the ego and reconnecting to the love that's already inside of you. That's why I said you can't really force this. You can't force yourself to love something, but you can discover the love that's already there. You can uncover it.
Okay. Well, give us a process or a method for uncovering that love that is already there, because I think that, you know, the world has done a very good job of making most people afraid of love. You listen to the songs, you watch television shows, and the general consensus is love hurts, you know, because we've wired that in our brains, and we've associated trying to love with pain because we've been hurt. So how do we overcome that fear of love?
Yeah, I mean, I know that when I was 18 years old, which is a very long time ago, I had grown up in a society just like you're talking about. You know, you don't openly say that you love something. You, especially in my culture, it was unthinkable to say that you love God or that you love Jesus or something like that, because my parents were not religious, my society was not religious. And so when I first found the spiritual path, I couldn't log into that. There was no way I could even think about that. But I loved knowledge. I loved learning. I loved understanding something. And I had so many questions about life that I just had to have them answered.
Right.
So for me, it was my love for knowledge that drove my path for the first many years.
Okay.
And then there came a different phase where I started, you know, after I started learning about Ascended Masters, I started feeling this love for the Ascended Masters. And the first two masters that I personally logged into were Mother Mary and Saint Germain. And when I, you know, learned about these masters, when I started reading and hearing some of the dictations they had given, it just opened my heart to loving them. And then there came a phase later where I had been in the Ascended Master teachings for a long time and had practiced degrees, and one day I read something that said, consider what you really love, what really motivates you. And I sat down, and I think for the first time I asked myself that question totally openly. And the answer that came to me from the deepest core of my being was, I love God.
Wow.
I just love God with all of my being. You know, and it was almost a shock to my outer mind to acknowledge this, because it was so alien to my culture. And it was almost up until that point, I had been following the spiritual path for probably 15 years, but God had been sort of way out there on the periphery, you know. I hadn't really dared to look at that.
Well, Kim, when we come back from commercial break, I think most people in Christianity have been taught to fear God. And so let's talk when we come back from commercial break about how we can overcome the fear of loving God. You're listening to Divine Love Talk on CRN. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, talking with my co-host, Kim Michaels, about finding the courage to face your own darkness.
Are you married? Do you and your husband both have term life insurance? If you both don't, you should. You have a lot to protect. Call now, get a free quote for your husband, and while you're at it, get a quote for yourself too, because you both need term life insurance. Call now. 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542. Rates are at all-time lows. We'll shop over 30 top-rated companies to get you the best possible rates. Term life insurance. It's the perfect way to protect the quality of your family's lifestyle. You and your husband both need term life insurance, so call now for a free quote for the both of you. 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542.
Do you have unfiled tax returns or owe the IRS or state more than $10,000? If you don't take action now, your tax problem is going to get worse, much worse. Seizure of property, bank levies, wage garnishments, and potential criminal prosecution. And if you owe the IRS back payroll taxes, chances are you will be visited at your home or business by an IRS agent. Don't become paralyzed by fear. Take action now. Call the experts at U.S. Tax Shield for help. Our team of experienced tax attorneys can get you protected, stop collections, and negotiate a permanent settlement with the IRS and state, potentially saving you thousands of dollars. At U.S. Tax Shield, our tax advisors will review your case for free, inform you of your rights, and give you a guaranteed quote. No games and no tricky upsells. That's why we have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. Put an end to your torment. Get protected. Get the Shield. Call U.S. Tax Shield now at 800-211-8753. That's 800-211-8753. 800-211-8753.
Did you know that with a bachelor's degree, on average, you can make almost twice as much over a lifetime than a person with just a high school diploma? Yes! According to the U.S. Census Bureau, you can make almost twice as much. Going back to college is now easier than ever. There are select online colleges that provide laptops to their students. In fact, there are thousands of college programs on your laptop. You can go to college anywhere and everywhere right from a laptop. Call My College Laptop, and you can find hundreds of programs from accredited colleges and universities nationwide. Start a new career in law enforcement, business, information technology, healthcare, and hundreds of others. Call My College Laptop to find an online college that will provide you with a laptop. In no time at all, you can double your earning potential. Double your earning potential! Call now, 1-800-731-4185. That's 800-731-4185. 800-731-4185.
Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep because someone broke into her apartment and stole all her sheep, not to mention a 50-inch flat-screen TV. Luckily, the Geico Insurance Agency had helped her with renter's insurance, and she got full replacement. She has since trained her sheep to do voice impressions of various attack dogs, and now feels very safe. Visit Geico.com to see how affordable renter's insurance can be.
Chuck Wilder here, host of the original Talkback. Noon to 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time, 3 to 5, out there on the East Coast. You know, we cover everything you need to know to keep up with what they don't want you to know. Talkback, CRN, Digital Talk, noon to 2 Pacific Daylight Savings Time.
Okay, we're back with more of Divine Love Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, and today we're talking about finding the courage to face your own darkness. And Kim Michaels, my co-host, a lot of these ideas are coming from his book, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid. Kim, we were talking about how to overcome the fear of loving God because we've been indoctrinated from very early on to fear God and also to fear love. So what advice would you give to a person who wants to find that love in their heart and push that darkness out and love God? How do we get there?
Well, it's a dual process, because first we have to look at the lies about love that we have been indoctrinated with, and the lies about God. And as you said, we've all been indoctrinated with the angry God in the sky, and it's a complete it's a fabrication, not only of the human consciousness, but of those forces that do not want us to find God. And then the other one is to get in touch with who we really are, because the fact is, we are all extensions of God. There is only one mind in the universe, and we are extensions of that one mind. And so when we realize that, we naturally feel love for God.
Well, you know, this whole, because I know I read the whole Bible when I was 12 years old, and the main thing that stood out to me was this angry, vindictive, God that was wrathful and jealous and all of this, and I was just terrified of disobeying this God, and it caused me to live this life of fear that I was going to do something that would cause me to, go to hell. And there's no joy in that kind of life. And so for me, it took decades to dismantle those fears and that programming from early childhood. And I can say that now that I have come into this place where I understand that we've given God a bad rap, and we blame God for everything because He gave us this amazing gift of free will, which is a double-edged sword that can hurt us if we choose to use it out of fear, but it can open up amazing vistas if we use it for good and for love. And I don't know how to express how important it is to stop blaming God for everything that's going on in the world, versus looking at ourselves and owning that, look, I'm choosing to see things this way or to believe things this way, versus I have a choice to look at it differently. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I follow your experience with the Bible. I actually think that the Old Testament, they should have an age limit, and nobody under a certain age should be able to read it. And that age should probably be around 70, 80 years old or something like that. Because, it is a totally different image of God than what was given to us by Jesus. Just read the New Testament. Fear not, little flock, for it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. How are you going to love this angry, judgmental Old Testament God with all your heart, mind, and soul? It just can't be done. But that's why we have to realize that this is not the real God, because the real God is a God of unconditional love. And it's true that you said that we can be hurt by exercising our choices, but the thing is, God gave us free will, and it is always free. We may have gone into a certain sense of self that has caused us to feel hurt, but God never restricts our ability to go out of that self. It's actually the evil forces that we talked about last week that want to make us believe that once we have gone into a certain limited self, we can never get out of it. And that's why we should feel bad about it forever,
Which actually makes no sense. Like, sometimes I look at some of the limiting beliefs that I've been holding on to, and when I finally meditate on it and I ask for a higher understanding, and I ask for what's missing in me, what haven't I learned about this so that I can resolve it, it's hilarious how small we can be, and all these things that we hold on to that are preventing us from being happy and receiving love and receiving joy, because we are afraid of other people's approval, or what I'm discovering about myself is that we have this sense of entitlement sometimes, that when someone has done something to us, that they need to pay. And that's an aspect of our darkness that I think as spiritual people, we don't want to look at that. And I know for myself that comes from that programming with the Old Testament of, vengeance, where you want vengeance. And if you look at the movies on television, it's about, you got to find vengeance and you got to find justice. And I know a big part of my psychology is I believe in justice. And I've had to accept there's no justice really on this planet if you're trying to look for it within the legal system. I mean, forget it.
Yeah, but that's where, again, if you look at the difference between what Jesus taught and the impression you get from the Old Testament, they're again fundamentally different.
Yeah.
The Old Testament was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and Jesus said, turn the other cheek, forgive 70 times 7.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was really saying was, if you want to be free from this planet, there cannot be anything you want to do or solve or resolve. You cannot want to punish anybody. You cannot want to change anybody else. You can only focus on changing yourself by simply letting go of the past.
Well, what's interesting, Kim, this just hit me, is that the duality, when you look at the teachings in the Old Testament versus the New Testament, and I think that was what I've been struggling with all this time, is how to reconcile the two, because when you read it when you're really, really young, they both become indelibly imprinted in your psychology, and they are unreconcilable, from that dualistic standpoint until you move into a higher level of consciousness. And that helps me understand why so many people are stuck in conflict and really can't move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Old Testament is fear-based.
Yes.
And it's a fear-based path. Jesus, in his pure teachings, is entirely love-based, but unfortunately Christianity, also partly because it was influenced by the Old Testament attitude, has almost given Jesus this overlay of being lumped in with the Old Testament and the angry God in the sky.
Yeah.
And so many people today don't understand how truly and unconditionally love-based Jesus' teachings are. I mean, it's just astounding when you sort of start looking at it,
And, honestly, I didn't come into an appreciation for how love-based Jesus' teachings are until I stumbled upon your massive body of work, and I discovered a Jesus that I could actually relate to and truly and honestly admire and absolutely love. And he has this sense of justice that it's right on, this honesty that's there. And also I just love his frankness and candor and honesty that just resonates with me on so many levels. And I'm just so grateful for finding the real Jesus, actually, from the Ask Real Jesus website that I pointed out last week. That was a website I did not want to look at.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand that, because I described earlier how I went through the process of first loving knowledge, then loving some ascended masters, then realizing my love for God. But the last spiritual being that I was able to acknowledge that I loved was Jesus. And that took me until 2002 before I could actually acknowledge that I truly loved Jesus. And that was because of the image that was put upon Jesus by Christianity.
Okay.
Where he was lumped in with the whole Old Testament thing, and I never could reconcile this. I never could understand how Christianity could commit, like, the Crusades, the witch hunts, the Inquisition, and all this stuff. How do you reconcile that with turning the other cheek?
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And so as a child or as a young person, you just don't know how to deal with that kind of a conflict, And it took me many, many years to get to that point where I realized this has nothing to do with the real Jesus. And then I discovered that I love the real Jesus, and I really would love nothing more than serving to help other people discover the real Jesus. And that's when the website started coming forth.
Wow. Well, that is interesting. As a child, that was the first ascended master who touched my heart before I read the Old Testament. I mean, I had, this just knowingness and this amazing relationship with him as a comforter for me, living in a very abusive household. That was my comfort, was calling on him.
Right.
But then after reading the Old Testament, I just kind of lumped it all together and lost that comfort, in him, because I just got confused. And then it took me all these decades for my daughter to find your website and find a Jesus that was real and that I could really, really love. And there's nothing that I can actually recommend more than those who are on a true, sincere, honest path of spirituality and awakening and consciousness to take a look at Transcendence Toolbox and all of the other websites that you have and discover these amazing masters who have gone before us and who are lighting the way and who are just there instantly when you call on them. And it's something, I think it's probably the last phase of our development where we've been so disconnected from that source that I think it's so important to let people know that there is something higher out there than the teachers that they have been disappointed in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and I think the book we're talking about, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid, is really unique in spiritual literature, because when you first hear about ascended masters, it's easy to see them way up there, and it's maybe harder to relate to them.
Right.
But Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid is dictated by a master that just ascended, and that in her last embodiment was a known spiritual teacher. And this has never been done before. And I really find myself that when I read this book, I'm just amazed at how it opens my heart to her, to the spiritual path, to the ascended masters. And I've heard many other people say the same thing who have read the book, you know, that it's just really unique how it makes you relate to the masters in a much more direct way than before.
Well, and what I like about her is she is brutally honest about her weaknesses and her psychology, and she's not trying to make excuses for it or justify it. She's sharing, actual experiences that happened in her organization and owning her part in it, but also giving us a perspective, a much higher perspective of what it was all about. And some of it she wasn't even aware, of that higher perspective until she worked through a lot of her stuff on the other side. So that does encourage me, but I also like the fact that she is laying out a very simple, very clear path to ascension through finding an actual guru that you can connect with and that you can relate to, and that's very challenging, I think, on this plane.
Yeah, and I think that one of the wonderful things about that book really is that she describes how in order for her to ascend, she had to overcome her own Kool-Aid, because she had been a well-known spiritual teacher, and throughout her service and having thousands of followers who all idolized her, she had bought into that and created a certain self-image, and she had to let go of all of it in order to ascend. And what she really wants to get across with this book is that anybody who was in contact with her and who might have idolized her, they also need to let go of that image of her, because you can't really ascend unless you let go of the same illusions that she had to let go of in order to ascend,
Right.
And it's really unique to read this.
Well, and it's beyond anything that I could have expected. I had no expectations when I was reading the book, but I developed this sense of tremendous respect for the work that she did. And I don't know, it can be very discouraging. I don't think I could have been in her organization because she was way too exacting. You know, I could not have that kind of teacher. You know, I need more of a free space, you know, in which to grow. But I think it was the times in which she was in.
Yeah, and that's what she explains in the book. There was a certain spiritual cycle where she had volunteered to play a certain role.
Yeah.
And her challenge was to free herself from the role, and her challenge for anyone who encountered her is to also transcend the role, because otherwise we're not going to move on.
Okay, well, after commercial break, we'll wrap this up, and then next week we'll continue our discussion on more tidbits from that book. You're listening to Divine Love Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, on CRN, and I'm talking with Kim Michaels about Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid.
Hi folks, Fred Dreyer for Regenix. Like so many people today, I was losing my hair. I was literally watching it fall out, jumping right off the top of my head. So I said, that's it, enough. I called Regenix. When they introduced me to their patented hair analysis program, I immediately saw why I was losing my hair. Through their microscopic examination, I saw gray, sickly scalp. The hair follicles themselves were caked and clogged with the dirty, oily sludge. I was so relieved. Finally, there was hope. So now, as I approach my 8th year on the Regenix program, my scalp is pink and clean and my hair is growing back. That's right, it's growing back. It makes so much sense. Don't wait. Call Regenix right now. Go to the phone and put an end to your worries. Start by calling 1-800-REGENIX. That's 1-800-REGENIX, or go to Regenix.com.
You order a glass of your favorite Cabernet, fresh asparagus, hollandaise on the side, a filet, medium rare. You unfurl your napkin with a flair, close your eyes, and prepare to listen. Ah, there it is. The sweet music you long to hear. The sizzle. The sizzle of a Ruth's Chris steak.
The most magnificent corn-fed prime beef, broiled to perfection at 1800 degrees. Some call it a sizzle. We call it an anthem.
As the waiter approaches, you think, is this one mine or that one?
Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Like Ruth always said, life's too short to eat anywhere else.
Make a reservation online at ruthschris.com or by calling 800-544-0808. Homeowners, now is the season to be thinking about your roof, because all it takes is one storm to turn a small roof problem into a major leak. If it's time for a new roof, call Sears at 888-465-9720. You can save $500 if you call right now. Sears licensed, fully insured contractors can get your roofing job done right. Just call 888-465-9720. Sears has a variety of shingles and styles that are built for long-lasting performance, and you'll save $500 if you call now. So call Sears for a free and home consultation at 888-465-9720. Hurry, offer ends soon. Not available in all areas. Installation provided by Sears authorized licensed contractors. License information available upon request. That's Sears Roofing. Call right now and save $500. Call 888-465-9720. 888-465-9720. Call Sears now and get that roof repaired. Call 888-465-9720.
Okay, we're back with more of Divine Love Talk, wrapping up this discussion with my co-host Kim Michaels on finding the courage to face your own darkness. Kim, I think next week we need to really go into how one can find a guru who, to me, is a spiritual teacher today that can help you face your darkness and overcome your psychological issues. I know know for a fact that that is critical for anyone on the spiritual path, to continue to grow and to find, I mean, we're basically looking for happiness. We're looking for joy. And you can't really get into that place if you're not willing to work through your stuff. And as I was saying before commercial break, I would not be able to deal with the kind of guru that Elizabeth Prophet was. And I think today we need to look at that and give the audience some help on what to look for in a spiritual teacher. So are you okay with that for next week?
Yeah, that sounds very good.
Okay.
It's a good topic.
All right. And so in wrapping this up, what would you like to leave the audience with in terms of finding the courage to face their own darkness?
Well, just that you have to love something more than the darkness, you know, and so that you come to that point where you realize you have been striving for a while on the spiritual path. You have certain goals you want to get to, like you talked about happiness or whatever it might be for the individual, and you're not getting there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to acknowledge you're not there, and then you have to remember Einstein saying, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, you're insane.
Yeah.
And so you have to do something different. You know, and you have to realize that you have to love something so much that you are willing to look at what's standing in your way, which is your own psychological hang-ups and your illusions and these epic dramas that you might be caught in.
Okay.
Whatever causes you to react to anything on earth is what will keep you from taking the next step on your path.
And I also think it's really important for those of us who are teachers, you know, you're a teacher, I'm a teacher as well, to be willing to continually look at our own selves and our own darkness. And for me, it's been very important with my students to have them not get attached to me and to not depend upon me, but, you know, to just see me as someone who is showing them the door and showing them the way, but that they have to do the work themselves and not depend on me to show them every single next step that they've got to take. I mean, I'll be there with them, but I cannot do it for them. But we as teachers, we need teachers, you know, and that has been the challenge for me, finding other teachers, and your work has helped me a lot. So I'd like to talk about that next week as well. So
sounds good.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today and encourage you to continue to do your work and to continue to read and to continue to study and to continue to question everything and find that courage to face your darkness, because that's where you're going to find the light. I am your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, with the Divine Love Talk, and you've been listening to my co-host, Kim Michaels. Check out his new book, Don't Drink Your Own Kool-Aid, and his website, TranscendenceToolbox.com. And you can catch us on Divine Love Talk on Facebook. Thank you for joining us.